Hello.
So, hi.
How's it going?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been watching any of the Olympics?
I don't have cable. So when I go out to restaurants and things, that's when I see
Watch
the
it
Olympics.
then.
I'm one of those people that's killing Peacock because I'm just like
Don't
not
talk to
watching
me
it.
about Peacock. So these are I'm not going to say these are the worst Olympics ever because certainly Munich in 1972 was terrible. 1932 with Hitler was awful, but they're bad because you can't watch the good performances on like primetime TV anymore. I will turn on primetime NBC and be like, oh, we just watched Nathan Chen. He's done. It was a fabulous thing. But they don't give it to you because they want you to watch it on the paid streaming Peacock channel or whatever it is. It drives me crazy.
I hope they figure it out for next time.
Well, I think
this
this is
didn't
what they
work,
want.
Peacock. Figure it out.
I think they want you to pay.
Well, obviously.
And so the primetime's become like a relic, just unbelievable, so bad.
Speaking of paying, you're paying for your comments about the Olympics last time,
Oh,
aren't you?
am I? Oh my gosh! So if you weren't on the last podcast, I was kind of mocking curling, and saying basically anybody that had a broom or a mop could actually be a good curler. And I got some feedback from people that were watching this thing, like, we need to have a conversation about curling.
I think we got to send you out onto the rink and we'll see how easy it really is.
Well, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying, any middle-aged dad looks like they could do it, right? In fact, those guys all look like they're middle-aged dads, don't they? So I just don't feel like it's that big of a, as an Olympic sport. I know I'm going to get more hate mail from my friends, but it's
So
just
funny.
I don't get into it.
You don't
Needless to say.
like watching it. And this is so wonderful, right? This is what makes the world go around. Everybody has their preferences and what they think is fun, athletic and entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
I mean, some of the sports are just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I did get to watch some downhill skiing last night.
Yeah,
That was
those are
last night,
great.
which was really
the
awesome.
moguls.
Yeah.
I met Johnny Mosley, and to see
You met Johnny Mosley?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What was he like?
He's wonderful, just
Really?
kind and wonderful, and friendly, outgoing, great
That's
guy.
awesome.
Yeah, just like you would hope.
Yeah.
Right. Very, very
Oh,
friendly.
how cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so welcome to A Place of Possibility. We're happy to have you here. I'm Richard Del Monte,
I'm Angela Wright.
and today, what are we talking about? We are talking about how to have a conversation with your spouse/partner about money. And those conversations really, as I'm going to be interviewing Angela, are really ideally done from any time from dating all the way through, like if you're engaged, all the way through if you've been married for 30 years.
Yeah.
Right? They're really
This
important
is for everybody.
conversations.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't even have them because they're afraid to do it. They don't know how to start them. They don't want to broach the subject. They don't want to rock the boat. So hopefully you are going to shed some light on that today.
I am.
Yes,
Yeah.
you are. Yes.
We even did an episode 14, on if you already find yourself in conflict with your partner, go watch that first and then come back and watch this. And it's all about how to get through some of that conflict and have this conversation in a great way.
You don't want to bring boxing gloves to this meeting. This conversation is not
Yeah.
good. So we're going to give you some tips today on how to make these conversations productive, how to have an agenda for the conversation so you stay on track. And we're going to give you some questions that you should think about that you could ask each other.
Yeah.
Yep. And we've seen couples that have done this really, really well, and other people who have floundered, and other people who have really crashed into the rocks and not done it very well. We're going to share some stories about that.
Yeah.
And so the guy that we're going to be talking about, Angela has written, is on our blog, and it will also be in the show notes from this. So you make sure you get that because you won't be able to get everything just from this conversation that
Yeah.
you need
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And, talking about money early and having ongoing conversations can actually be a bonding experience for a couple rather than something that
sure.
tears them apart. And, it's never too late to get started if you missed the memo on talk early about this. And
Yep.
in fact, I encourage you to continue this conversation at least annually. So if you've been married for 30 years, talk to your partner and then keep talking to your partner. Eventually, you may want to bring your children into family money meetings. Some people would do like annual family councils or family summit meetings, and you just be really surprised what you learn about yourself and your family and your financial situation when you talk about all of this regularly.
Yep. And you don't have to agree with your spouse or your partner on every aspect of this. But what's really important is you have to understand each other's perspectives and where you come from. That's kind of the opportunity to be able to come up with a compromise situation that works and to draw you. If this is done right, you can be drawn so much closer, right, to each other.
Oh, totally. Of
Tremendously
course.
closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually wonderful. So, Angela's going to be the person I'll be interviewing today primarily, and she has a wealth of information about this. You will not believe what how prepared she is and how much she understands about this. And it's funny because her background is. When I first met her, she was very interested in this, and she's been developing her skills in this area ever since then for the last almost 14 years now, right?
Yep.
And she was the third family enterprise advisor in this country. The Family Enterprise Exchange, is that what it is? Mm-hmm. They are a Canada-based organization. There's a lot of small businesses that are owned by families in Canada, right?
And large enterprises, family owned.
Yeah. And so Canada's got it going. They've got it down where they actually are prepared for this. And they've trained a bunch of advisors to do this. In America, it's a little bit slower. But she saw the opportunity, and she's a pro at this.
Yeah, and managing a family enterprise is often about having communications about money and resolving conflicts around money. So pretty relevant to this topic.
Yep. So besides your FEA, how did you get to what brought you to this, and how did you develop your expertise?
Yeah, personal experience and pain. So,
Heartache.
Getting a little vulnerable, early on in my marriage, this was an issue. And it was something that, we came to blows about often. And I wanted to figure out how to make this work and have harmony around finances in the marriage.
Sure.
So I started studying it and interviewing people. And, I think between the two of us, we've probably worked with hundreds of couples and families on this conversation. Many, many hours in our own therapy offices with our spouses and learning.
I have no comment about that.
Learning about how to do it really, really well.
Yeah, we could actually have our own MFP for the amount of money we spent on that on psychotherapy right over the years.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yep. So let's start off with how do couples, get started having one of these conversations? They seem a little odd, like let's sit down and talk about money.
Yeah.
It's like not the kind of thing you might normally want to do. So how do you get started?
Yeah, and oftentimes your parents taught you not to talk about money. It's rude, right?
And how?
So the first, I want you to think about creating a container and a foundation for having this conversation. So set and setting. So set is, your mindset, and the setting is where we actually are. So you want to find a time where you can be free of distractions. And that means, kids are at school or in bed, pets are occupied, your phones are off, and you're just really focused on each other. And some couples even set a time, like a specific time to do this. So we have one family that does money day. And I think this is so cute. So it's the 22nd of every month. They have money day, and they sit down for about an hour. They pay their bills. They review the budget. They manage their finances separately. So they settle up with each other, and it works really well for them. And everyone knows the 22nd is money day.
It's so smart.
It really is.
Do that, It's so forward thinking. That's great.
Well, one of the things is that it gives them an opportunity to have this conversation without approaching each other on the fly, right? Like, hey, I noticed you spent $100 on shoes. That can be really, confrontational, right? But instead, it's like, this is the time we talk about money, because the reality is in our society, we need it to, live. And it's something we have to do, right?
Sure.
So,
Yeah. So what kind of questions are we talking that you should be discussing in these?
Yeah. Well, let me say, so set and setting, couple more things here. So have some supplies available. I highly encourage you to have snacks and beverages and Kleenex.
Wine.
No, save the booze for after, or maybe not. Do your thing. Pen and paper, and have your computers or however you manage your finances available, and then commit to each other in terms of, this is about learning about each other's ways of being with money, hopes and dreams and desires. And I want to remind everybody that there is no right or wrong way to do money. There's only personal preference. So try to reserve judgment of your partner if they do things differently than you. That's really hard, especially when you believe that your way is right. As we often do, of course. Right? We all have an ego. So open your mind and your heart, and perhaps there's something for you to learn.
Yep. Okay. So the grist of it, what kind of questions are we talking?
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start with an icebreaker. We'll just ease you into this conversation. So what lessons did you learn about money from your parents? So this gets at the foundation that we all have inside of us and the money values that were given to us. And I want to remind everybody that they were given to you, right? And so if they didn't serve you well, or they've created some bad habits, don't judge your partner for that, right? They didn't choose that. And you can ask, what specifically did your parents teach you that helped? And in what ways maybe did they fail you around money, right? And, you have just all sorts of stuff that we bring from our childhoods around money. So this is like setting a foundation with each other. Where did my partner come from regarding money? A really great question you can ask is, what does the word money conjure up for you? Maybe what one word does money conjure up?
Feelings. Some people just have feelings from it,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Yeah.
So once we asked the client this and she said food, which I thought was really interesting. And she went on to tell a story that, when she was young, they were very poor. She had an alcoholic mother and the food stamps would run out every month. And so there was never enough food. She got a job at 11 years old to help make ends meet. And her whole life, she never spent a dime on anything other than basic necessities. By the time she came to us, she had enough money to spend more and she still wouldn't do it. And so for years, we worked with her on this. And, huge victory. One day she called and said, I'm outside with a new car. Please come outside. And it was a Mercedes. And we were so excited for her. It was just, she had really shifted some of the poor habits that she had around money.
Interesting.
Other people have said what?
No, just, like I remember in my situation, my brother and I were talking a few years ago about how we grew up, and our mother, the thing we got imprinted on was our mom would run out of money. My father got paid every 2 weeks from his job. And so we would run out of money on Friday, and she'd go down and start writing bad checks at the grocery store, and then when he got paid on Tuesday, she would grab that paycheck and run to the bank and deposit that bank. That check, and it was because, so that was kind of her MO, always short, and robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
So that was a very strong imprint for us that we had to overcome.
I'll say, I wonder why you became a financial advisor.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
For sure. I'm sure it had an impact. But this is all we bring this to our relationships, right? And it's our baggage, part of our baggage that we bring.
I often hear things like freedom, reward, burden, security, control is a big one. Yeah. So, just conjure up a word and then talk about how did this come up for you? And so you're learning about your partner's history and values around money. And it's a really wonderful way to set the stage for this conversation.
Good. So when you get done with this part, you're going to have to start getting into the nitty gritty questions like the present day stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what are the most typical and effective questions that come up that people should be thinking about?
Right. So starting with your household budget, how much money does this family or this unit of people need to survive? What are our combined household expenses? And so I encourage everybody to work on your budget before you come to this meeting, especially if you're new, like just moving in together or newly engaged. Do that before you come to the meeting and compare your budgets with each other. And you can also talk about things along budget, like what level of spending are we comfortable with on certain things? Travel and gifts for other people, cars, clothes, etc. And I'll say there's a lot of conflict potential in that question, spending levels. So again, if you find yourself on question 2 immediately in conflict, take a breath. Take a walk. Remember that it's normal to have conflict around money. And then check out episode 14 where we have some strategies and how to listen to each other and get past that conflict. If you struggle with making a budget, there are 2 web-based or phone apps that I like, mint.com and YNAB, You Need a Budget. You can also use Excel, and we can post a template in the show notes if you want to just write it all out. However you do it, doesn't matter. Have it done and then talk to your partner about it.
Great. What about the elephant in the room in many cases? Like should spouses or partners combine their money, or should they maintain their separate resources?
Yeah, big question. Many assume that combining is necessary. I mean, historically, that's what we've always done, right? Even, if you think 200 years ago, right, we combined our resources to survive. And so a lot of that, when you first got married, it was just assumed probably that we'd combine our money and...
Hey, wait a minute now, don't date me.
Sorry.
No. Yeah, it was more common for sure.
Yeah, but with the rise of 2-income households, we've seen that a lot of couples are separating their finances now. And it's really interesting. If you find that you're incompatible financially or you have a big income disparity, I'm going to go through some options of different ways that you could combine or separate your finances, and you just choose what works best for you. You still, no matter what option you choose, you still need to coordinate your family budget and, some goals for the future, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So there are 5 methods of that I know about of managing your finances. So I'll give you the list and then we'll dig into each one. So you have completely combine your finances, completely separate your finances, separate but equal, set percentage, and set contribution, or set dollars, you could call it. So let's dig into each one.
Let's do that.
All right, so completely combined finances. This is the traditional model. Everybody's money goes into the family pot, bank account, and that bank account is used to pay the family bills. And ideally, the family income covers those bills. You've done your budget, and there's an agreed upon spending and saving budget. Done. Pretty easy. I say easy, but in completely combined finances, I think that's where we find the most conflict, because you go out and buy a $200 pair of shoes and I'm like, hey, wait a second, what? We didn't agree upon that, or something like that.
Yeah.
And everybody sees it all, and you have a little bit less control over how the money is spent.
Right. One of my things that happened to my wife and I when we got married was we thought it was the right thing to do. We would generate closeness by sharing the same checking account.
Yeah.
And so what happened was someone would forget to write the check they wrote down in the ledger, or we had two different ledgers. Well, back in the day, we had 2 different ledgers, and so we weren't updating them occasionally, regularly. So we'd say like we were bouncing checks all the time, and we were getting mad at each other and fighting and everything. We finally decided, okay, wait. This isn't worth it. So we just got separate checking accounts. We're on each other's checking account, but like she's on top, the name on hers, I'm on top in mine, and we've never had a problem since.
I love that.
It was
and
really
modern
just a very
technology
simple,
would have helped you guys too, because if you could have seen it online.
Yeah, but still, until they clear, you don't really know,
True.
right? So
Yeah,
you
that's
can end
true.
up bouncing checks. Yeah, not fun.
Good. That's a good example.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so then the other one is completely separate. That's the 180 from completely combined. So each partner maintains their own budget, their own credit accounts. Goals are sometimes combined, but not always. 2 people can save separately for retirement if they want to. I see that sometimes when there's a big age disparity with the clients. With this model, all you really need to do is decide who's paying which bills in the household. And often you see it like, I'll take the mortgage and the insurance, you take the groceries and the kids stuff, and done. Sometime, and then you'll also decide, when do we combine our resources, if ever? Like maybe we each contribute to the children's college savings accounts, or we each contribute to the retirement, which is a joint goal. It's just lots of ways that you could do that, but there's no commingling of the money or the debt in that case. Then we have what we call separate but equal, and that's where each partner maintains their own banking and credit accounts, and they each contribute half of the household expenses. It's just a really simple way of doing it. It works well when the partners are kind of on the same level income-wise. And the most important thing to work out here is what's considered household expense and what's a personal expense. And like the possibilities are endless, and how this is like whatever works for you. There is no right answer. But often what we see is the mortgage, insurance, and like life insurance, disability, property insurance, groceries, utilities, housekeepers and landscapers, and the children's needs. And then separate things would be like cars, fuel, dining out without your partner, wardrobe. Like I was thinking more along the lines of going to lunch with your coworkers or something, not where your mind went.
No. I was thinking FOMO.
Totally. Hobbies, you really like golf. That's super expensive. You pay for that on your own, whatever, right? I've even seen travel fall into either category.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so then we come down to the set percentage. This is my absolute favorite way of doing things when you have a large income disparity among the spouses. And essentially what happens is you do the same thing in separate but equal. So you decide what's a household expense and what's a personal expense. And then you determine how much of each spouse's income we would have to contribute to the family household expense pot in order to cover all of our expenses. I'm going to put this to a numerical example for you. I think it makes it a little bit easier. Okay. So we have Jane and Tom. Jane earns $100,000 a year. Tom earns $50,000 a year. Their combined household expenses are $100,000 a year. So if they each contribute 70% of their income to the household, they'll cover their expenses with $5,000 a year left over. Some couples try to get that down to the dollar. Other couples leave a little bit of a slush fund, and then they'll spend that on maybe something they want to do to upgrade the house or a vacation or saving, whatever they want to do with it. Yeah, exactly. And so Then each partner gets to keep the remaining 30% of their income for their own discretionary spending. And what I love about this is that it feels really fair because you get the same percentage of your income, snagged away from you into the family pot. And what I also love about this one is that as each person's incomes go up, the family budget can increase. There are more resources available to the family, but one person isn't stuck, contributing more of their income. This works really well for people who are raised to believe that equal is fair. Like my sister and I were raised that way.
Yeah.
So I really love that one.
I could see where you could also have a kind of a hybrid of that, where each spouse ends up having $5,000 a year left over, right? No matter how much. So for discretionary spending, you just kind of level it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's the set dollar method, basically. So instead of taking a percentage of your income, you figure out how many dollars of each person's income that you have to contribute.
I see. Okay.
And then everything else is left over. And so in that way, the family resources don't increase as you get raises. You're still contributing, let's say your $50,000 to Jane in this case is contributing her $70,000 into the family pot. And then as Jane's income increases, that's for her to keep.
Got it.
And again, there's a lot of values in here. Like you might be hearing this and going, oh, that's terrible. Jane sounds like she's stingy. Again, it's like whatever works for you, right? And some people just feel like the control thing about their money. Or maybe their spouse spends more freely. We'll talk about that in a second. And so Jane might be saying, well, Tom spends really freely. I'm not going to let him, spend all of our money.
Right. Fritter it away.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you just figure out what works for you.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about debt and credit? I mean, some people come into marriages with tremendous student loan
Especially
debt,
today.
or other kinds of debts. And some also come in with like hampered credit, right? They've got a broken wing when it comes to that. They've had trouble managing their credit. So how does that work?
Yeah. So this one is, the cause of a lot of marital fights. It's the cause of a lot of judgment in relationships as well. And so look, the long and short of it is you are where you are, and we're not going to judge our partner for what they've done in the past. So you're going to, I'm telling you not to. Stop doing that, please. So, you're going to look at each other's credit scores and credit history. Like go online and print it out and discuss what went on and how much credit you have available to you. What is your score? And do you have a history of missed payments? And do we differ in our ideas about acquiring debt? That's a really important thing for people to talk about, right? Some people we're taught, listen to a lot of Dave Ramsey, like never have any debt.
Yeah.
I was taught that debt is bad. All of it is bad. Don't do it. And I was like, 25 when I first started putting things on a credit card to get cash back. And even then I felt kind of uncomfortable. And other people are like, the money will come to pay it off. No worries. They're just more free with it. Again, both of those are right. There is no judging each other around this. And FICO scores are important, right? Because it will impact your ability to borrow. And so you just kind of make a plan on how you're going to do that going forward. This is not a compare. So let's say one partner has a lower credit score or more debt. Perhaps they, have a PhD and were in school for 10 years. I mean, it's really not a comparison of who has managed their money better. Stay curious, stay compassionate with each other. It does need to be done. And this one question can really avoid a lot of blowups in the future.
And there's also a way for, especially if you're in a new relationship, if you get the credit, look at each other's credit reports, you can find out if you're working with someone who's a crook, like someone that's going to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
I know one friend who was in a relationship with a guy, and he was like, he had a serial scammer, scamming people, getting with another woman, scamming her, leaving, scamming somebody else. And had she known that, if he would have had all these debts on his credit report and everything, she could have saved herself a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
So it's really good. And if they say, no, I'm not sharing with you, bye.
Oh, yeah. I think
there's only so much you can tolerate, right?
Gosh, I would caution, look, I'm not your therapist, but I would caution you about entering into a relationship with somebody who isn't willing to share this with you, with an asterisk in that if they have a lot of trauma around money in their history, like their family history, it might take somebody some time to open up. Or let's say they don't make a lot of money and they've been burned in the past by partners who want, want a sugar daddy or whatever. Like people might not be willing to open up so soon, but they should be able to communicate that much to you, right? If you've gone through question 1, you would get that and you would say, okay, what would it take for you to feel safe to share with me? You know, and let's set another time
Let's
to talk
get
about
there.
this.
Yeah, we'll go to therapy or something. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
What about people who are habitually like making late payments and stuff? Some spouses deal with that. Partners.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
It's tough. I mean, you have, in this case, I would approach your family like you're approaching the operations of a business, right? Take the person out of it. I have a couple like this where the wife she's not a spendthrift, but she constantly misses payments. It's just like not thinking about it, or the cash flow is kind of just not managed that well. And her husband just goes after her. Oh, I can't believe you forgot to make that payment. Oh my gosh. And they fight about it. And so, in that case, what they need to do is sit down and make a plan. They have a hole in their operations. How would you fill that if it was a business? What would you do? You might delegate that responsibility to the person who does it well. That's pretty obvious.
One way to go.
Some people don't want the burden of doing all of the bill pay for the family. So technology, auto pay on these bills is another really great way to solve missed payments.
Sure. Yeah, great.
That doesn't really have to be a thing anymore, missed payments. Auto pay.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. What about the dreaded S word? Spending. There's a minefield if there ever was one, right? Between partners.
Oh, yeah.
How do you approach that in a way that doesn't destroy a relationship?
Well, this goes back to the first question around money values. How does and you'll get this really quickly, like how your partner feels about spending when you're talking about money values. And yeah, this is like, answering this question again, like will save you a couple of fights a year, and knowing where each other stands and how much we're going to spend. So something interesting, a favorite trick, excuse me, of salespeople is you've got one spouse alone in a store, and in order to upsell you, a salesperson might say, well, Richard, are you sure you don't want to ask your wife before you buy this car?
What? What are you saying?
Yeah.
You don't need her.
Watch when you're out. This is super common. And don't fall for that trick. It's kind of a silly little tip, but
good call.
Yeah, but understand, I think the real issue around spending is people's ideas of big purchases, right? I mean, we have to meet our fixed expenses, but then beyond that, how we spend our money is super duper important. So I would say, going back to the original budget, how much are we going to spend on vacations each year? Are we going on crystal cruises, or are we going camping? And if you differ, you have to find a way to compromise. Right?
Depends on how sick I want to get.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no kidding. We're not. I guess we're not talking about cruises like we're not talking about Bruno anymore. Yeah. But for some couples, it's like $100. If you're going to spend more than $100, talk to me. Personally, I could go a couple $100 on a discretionary. You want a really nice pair of Tom Fords or something? Knock yourself out. Like, what's yours? You guys have one?
I don't know. More like, $1,000 probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have your regular expenses. Those are things that are expected. Like managing your partner's expectations is super important here. And then beyond that, you just like, hey, honey, we need a new air filter. Like air fan filter for the house. It's $400, and you talk about it, and then you make the choice going forward.
Yeah, good.
And again, also big conflicts crop up here, right? Like, no, we don't need that air filter. Yep. And so, many couples or healthy couples agree that not one person gets to unilaterally decide this. That's super hard when you only have one spouse that works. They often think that they own the control of the money in the household, and that they get to make all of the spending decisions. And so just deciding that we're going to decide together, and if we can't decide, we'll have a compromise, or maybe we'll have like a wise Swiss gentleman, which is one of the tools our family enterprises use when there's a stalemate in a decision. It's like, we're going to agree that we're going to call, maybe it's your financial advisor or a parent or a trusted friend.
Phone a friend kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like we can't decide, all right, let's call Richard and Angela and see what they think, and then let someone else.
That happens a lot actually, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
We get that.
Yeah, I've just a couple days ago, how much home can we purchase? One spouse thinks it's more, one spouse thinks it's less. And then, then we put some real numbers to it and we help them compromise.
We've talked about a lot of areas so far. This has been great. What about goal setting? If you don't know, it's been said, like, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to know if you ever get there, right? So how do you handle that part?
Well, you asked my favorite question, begin with the end in mind.
Oh,
So now I
that's
think you all
right.
heard that
Oh my
47
gosh, that's
times.
true. Yep.
You know, few people even ask themselves about their financial goals, let alone their partner. And I think some of that is a symptom of, struggling to make ends meet. You kind of can't think about the next steps. But I really encourage you to do it because having a positive vision for where you're going with your money will help motivate you to get there. And our retirement goals are impacted by how much we can save as a couple and our perspective on saving. And some clients have a more modest view of what retirement will look like. Some less so. I want to be, traveling the world and having a lot of fun. And so more than just aligning your annual savings, you really want to talk about your shared goals and your dreams and your vision for the future. And this is a really good opportunity to come closer together, right? Like, how wonderful is it to talk about your vision of the future and respect your spouse's vision of the future, right? Like, it might not be the same as yours, and that's totally okay. And you can plan around some of that stuff, actually.
May feel daunting, but it's actually a very uplifting conversation, right?
Yeah. And so some questions you might ask yourself or each other are, at what age do we want to have the option to work or not? That's, especially if you're young, that's a really good question to ask, because conceptualizing retiring at 60 when you're 22 is kind of absurd. But like, at what age do I want the option? And what would I do if I didn't have to work? And that question can inform how much money you're going to spend. Like, if I wasn't here all day, every day, I'd probably be out spending money.
So much easier to have a goal early in life, right? Because you can work towards, because the actual pain you have to suffer putting money away is so much lighter than if you start thinking about it at 50.
Yeah. I think we should do a show on like what happens if you start saving at 20 with, $20 a month versus 50. It makes a big impact in your overall life.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's like giving up a couple lattes a week versus, giving up 90% of your income to make it work, right? Yeah. So once the goals are set, then what?
Yeah. So then you got to figure out how you're going to get there, right? And this is where your level of financial acumen and skills, like, you have to get serious about what skills do we have? Do we know what to do? So we know we have to save some money. How much do we need to fund these retirement goals?
And in what?
Right. Where do we put it? And who helps us do it? And so, if oftentimes one partner has a skill or a unique ability in that area, like, obviously, in my relationship, I take that on happily because I love it, right? If you do determine together that you need a financial advisor, I encourage you both to go away and make your own list of what you want from your advisor, and then come back and combine those lists, because often it's really different. And you could find advisors who could suit those needs.
Yeah. We have people that want us to help them be held accountable on their budgets. Other people just want us to help them with their retirement plans and all that, so everybody's different.
Yeah. And some like really good advisors, we have some couples where one is really knowledgeable and the other one isn't. And so we spend a lot more time with the less knowledgeable partner, teaching them and kind of leveling the playing field between the two of them. And, that could be a really wonderful way to move forward in all of these goals.
And that, if someone feels like they kind of don't get it and they're really reluctant to talk about it, you can make light years of progress. I'm thinking about one friend of ours, a client of ours, who really was more, like artsy, and very, very creative and everything, but wasn't very strong in financial skills. And over a period of a couple, 3 years, that person has dramatically changed their game. Yeah. And they are on it now, and they have savings accounts, and they're controlling their spending, and they have made a shift that you would never even believe that it was the same person.
It's amazing.
So it's really possible. If you feel like you're, kind of on the short end of the stick with that, don't give up. You just have to work at it.
Or if you're those spouses that are really struggling, like my spouse is a spendthrift, I can't get her on board or him on board. Get it, a financial advisor, a third party can help. Another couple, married couple friends, the wife and I didn't know how to drive a stick. But what we decided is that we were not going to learn how to drive a stick from our own husbands, because that sounded like an argument waiting to happen. So we swapped husbands for the purpose of learning how to drive a stick shift automobile. And it was really wonderful because her husband was super patient with me and I listened to him. Whereas, I would have told my spouse to shut the heck up. Don't distract me. And it was like such a wonderful experience for both of us. And you can apply that to this as well. When if you're giving me crap about my spending, husband, I'm like, shut up. But if a financial advisor is, okay, I'm going to listen to you. It's different.
Yeah. Who's the source, right?
Yeah. So other questions you can ask around, like, so long-term financial goals are important, but then what do we do with extra money that we might have laying around beyond those long-term goals? Decide before you have the money, because what often happens is like, oh, there's an extra $5,000 in the checking account. Well, I'm going to book a flight to Hawaii. The other spouse can feel really like, almost used, or, like they didn't get to have input on how to spend that money. Sure. So decide now on what you're going to do with surplus. Yeah. You can also talk about, will we be saving and investing for these goals separately or together? That's kind of combined, like how you're going to do your money with your household will inform that generally.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the division of labor? I mean, you don't want to have a situation, I would imagine, where, one spouse is the slave driver and the other one is, just taking orders. How do you do that? How do you divide that up?
This is deeply personal in how you do this in your relationship. Like I said, as the financial planner in my relationship, I just took that on. And then I kind of informed the spouse. And so I think, some people split this up in like long-term planning versus short-term bill pay. That's kind of a nice way to do it. So I work with the advisor. I make sure all the savings are happening. And then you take care of, the day-to-day bill pay. Or you might split it up and say, I'm paying these 7 bills, you're paying these, or put them all on auto pay so no one has to do it. And then regular conversations, like our clients that do Money Day. They come together once a month, they look at the budget, they ask any questions, and then they move on with their lives. It's really wonderful.
Really effective.
Yeah. And if your goals align closely, then, one person might be okay with the other just taking care of it all. I mean, this is just like so deeply personal. But however you decide to split it up, each partner should know that they can always be honest and direct with the other partner about their feelings about what's happening, about their desires about what's happening. So maybe, you're running the bill pay, but I'm not liking the way you're missing payments. I'm not liking the way you're doing it. There's always an open line of communication and a willingness to change things when it's not working. Like, I'm feeling really burdened by the fact that I'm the only one that meets with our financial advisor. Please come to this meeting so you can understand how all of this works as well. So both spouses really should be in the financial planning meetings, honestly. But
so ideally, you're talking about people making agreements to do things for each other and then having to uphold them.
Yes.
Being held accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. I like that.
Yeah.
So last question, what is the best way to come up with an estate plan for that suits both partners? The Leave It to Beaver days, they're gone. Yeah. Ward and June, we have the straight, family that was blood gone, more blended families and lots of different, situations now. What do you recommend to people to think about?
Yeah. So again, deeply personal how you guys want to do this, but I think I would like to offer up an exercise for people to do. And I think that this should be the last thing that you do at the end of your money conversation. And I want to bring everybody back to what really matters. So picture your family sitting around a campfire at the family compound, and the year is 2060. The group is bigger and maybe more vibrant than you ever imagined, and communication flows freely. The family appears genuinely connected and joyful. And so you're a fly on the wall at this proverbial gathering. I'm going to ask you some questions, and these will be in the show notes as well. But what are your greatest wishes for this group of people? Who is there? What are they talking about? What is each attendee experiencing individually in their lives? And what is the group all about? What do you feel most grateful for? And what do you wish you could say to this group of people? If you can answer a lot of these questions before you go into an estate planning meeting, it will really tell your lawyer how you want the money pieces to make all of this work. And then you share that with your spouse. I mean, what a beautiful exercise to sit
really
around together and talk about, these 2 kids that we created, or in your case, these 5 kids that we created, and, the kids they create and the ones they create, and what are they all doing? Like, what does all of this mean? What is the purpose of what we're sitting around here doing? You take that to your lawyer, and certainly engage a lawyer for your estate planning, and go from there. The other thing that you can do if you've written all of this down is pull it out before your next family gathering now. What can I do, or what can I shift about the way that we do our like Christmas, let's say, to make my dream a reality today? Like, you might be undermining your own dream with the way that you behave with your children around the holidays or something like that. Or what would I do differently right now?
What a great conversation to have, right?
Oh my gosh,
Make
it's so wonderful. Right? And then
spouses.
finishing your money conversation on this topic, it's like a really positive note to end on. And it's wonderful. So if you were embroiled in a conflict at any point, this can help repair, and everybody walks away feeling, really hopeful for the future of their family.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we have time for maybe one question.
Okay.
What questions do we have? Let me see. Okay, so there's a question about, do I need a prenup? Are they good ideas?
Oh my gosh, a prenup. Yeah.
That's another whole podcast, right?
Boy, yeah. I mean, fraught with,
briefly.
yeah. So this is where, your money values and your own personal feelings about yourself and your partner really can collide. We often find parents of wealthy families will push children to get the prenup. And then people have all of these, notions about what it means. My spouse doesn't love me, or
trust me.
Yeah. Or they're beginning, assuming that we're going to fail. And I think that you can look at these conversations a little bit differently, right? Modern society, like, play the game in the society that you live in. This is something
realistic.
This is something that we do. Prenups can also be used to manage things like debt. So if you are really worried about your spouse's debt, they're coming into the marriage with a lot, you can write that into the prenup. And that could be the only thing that goes in the prenup. Like, it doesn't have to be, you're never getting any alimony from me, or whatever. All my assets are mine. I say that like it's wrong. If that's how you feel, that's no judgment, right? But they can be, it's, again, kind of beginning with the end in mind. It's not the ending that you want to have, but you could think through, if we get to the point where we have to pull the ripcord on this marriage, what do we want that to look like? Why don't we talk about that while we're getting along? Mm-hmm. Right?
Right. And I think that a lot of times these things unfortunately, they get shoved down spouses' throats. Like right before you're getting married, like, by the way, you have to sign this. Like, what? You're pulling this out, at the 11th hour.
It's really common.
It's really hard, but there are, like you said, there's really valid reasons for doing it. And if people can understand and hear each other, it can be a lot different experience. We know of one spouse who had a prenup shoved down their throat, and for the next 30 years, they resented it, and they used every opportunity they could find to shove it in the rest of the family's face, the parents, the in-laws, everybody, the spouse, and it just becomes, it could have been done so much more intelligently and emotionally with, high EQ, so that it actually was something constructive.
Yeah. And I mean, in that case, they pushed it down her throat at the last minute. But then also, she made a choice to continue to resent throughout the marriage. And so if you find yourself in that position, reconsider whether or not you want to marry into that family, and probably seek counseling at that point for yourself. Good question. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Okay, well, that wraps it up for today. Thank you. It was a really good conversation.
Thank you. It's really fun to talk about this.
We'll really get a lot out of this. And don't forget, we have this in our show notes, and it's on our website and our blog. And make sure you grab that. And we have our free book offer that we still are offering. If you love that last part about the family conversation and the campfire in 40 years, this book will help you get there.
Yeah. There's a lot more like that in this book as well, if you want to
stuff.
think about your family in that way. Yeah.
So let us know. Send an email to info@placeofpossibility.com, and we will send you a free book. Also, if you'd like a free 30-minute consultation with either Angela or I, or both of us, you can also get that through our website. We have a calendar. You can make appointments for yourself. And the last thing is, tune in 2 weeks, where we're hoping to speak about geopolitical strife. We're hoping to have an expert yet to be announced yet on that, because we know people are worried about Ukraine and what's happening in Russia and all that, and other, Asia, Taiwan, things like that. So we wanted to address that for people. And so be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, it should be a really great show.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Thank you
yeah.
so much for being with us today.
Yes, we really appreciate it. And
Good
we hope
luck
you
with
found
your
value in this.
conversations.
Absolutely. Write to us and let us know how they're going. We'd love to know.
Yeah,
right?
and also if you have another way of managing your family's finances, put it in the comments. I would love to hear about it and learn from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So until next time, remember, you're invested and so are we. Thanks a lot for